Hello, and thank you all for joining us for session number 2 of the 12 Days of FileMaker 12 series, sponsored by FM Academy. FM Academy is a consortium of FileMaker developers, trainers, and consultants, all FBA Platinum members, training folks on FileMaker 12 features over a 12 series or a 12 webinar series. Topic number 2 today is covering the new charting features in FileMaker 12. Our presenter today is Jerry Salem, a FileMaker developer with IT Solutions Consulting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Please help me welcome Jerry, and Jerry will take us into our second of 12 webinar series on FileMaker 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Today we are going to revisit charting in FileMaker. Seems like the entire process is new and exciting. I always think of databases as telling a story. There's the input, where data is put into the database. Inside the database, data gets managed and changed and modified. And then the data is typically sent out of the database, usually in the form of reports or instructions or invoices. What's exciting about charting is charting gives you an overview of what the data is like in your database and lets you ask the question, how is my business doing right now? Gives you a quick visual overview. So now let's look at how charting used to be done in FileMaker 11. This should be familiar to you. This is the original charting dialog box, where you can choose the chart type and the data that goes into the chart, and you get a little preview of something that hopefully will look like your chart. This is the new chart engine dialog box that we get in FileMaker 12. It is, compared to the original, a mighty dialog box. We can actually see a live representation of our chart using the live data, so you get to see what the chart will actually look like. On the right-hand side is a panel which is modeled after our familiar FileMaker inspector, where you can modify many different parts of the chart and change the look and the feel to make it do exactly what you need. We'll be spending a lot of time, obviously, in this section of FileMaker today. In FileMaker 11, FileMaker introduced 5 different types of charts: the bar, horizontal bar, the line, the area, and the pie chart. In FileMaker 12, they have doubled the number of charts that are available. This is the list of charts, plus with the new emphasis on the visual in FileMaker 12, in addition to just the name of the chart, you get a small icon reminder of what each chart looks like. Using these new charts, we'll be able to present our data in much better ways. And the thing that I'm happy about is there's less reliance on special tricks or techniques in order to show the data. And we can show much more complicated relationships between different parts of our database because we have many different ways to represent the data. Just as an overview, the main new chart types that we'll be seeing today is the stacked bar, which is familiar. It's very similar to the bar chart, but it lets you plot multiple pieces of data and show how each piece of data accumulates along your x-axis. Positive and negative chart, which is also another type of bar chart, but this one emphasizes positive and negative numbers, giving a much more visually appealing look to the user. The scatter plot, this one is quickly going to be propelled to the front of the list in my book. This actually lets us really plot data on an X and a Y scale. This is the most exciting part of the charting, and we'll be spending a little bit of time using this too. Finally, we have also added a bubble chart. A bubble chart is a sort of like a poor man's three-dimensional chart. It lets you plot things not only in an X and Y axis, but giving a third dimension to show a third way that data can be related. In this case, we're looking at time on the X-axis and sales numbers in the Y-axis, and the size of each one of these bubbles is the number of orders that make up each one of those points. These type of charts take a little bit of work, but they are very useful in certain situations, and I think it's certainly well worth it. Well, let's get right to the demo. There. I'd like to show you 3 different solutions today. 2 of them are actually based on a lot of real clients that we have here at IT Solutions, and another is not. This is an actual database. This is not the database. This is a copy of an actual database from a client that is manufacturing. They manufacture salad dressing. This is the main screen when an office user, when an administrator comes into the database. And what we see are 3 main graphs which give us an overview of what's going on with the company. Surrounding the 3 main graphs are a number of buttons that either take us to lists of data or are used to perform particular tasks. The first thing that I'd like to look at today is our old friend, the pie chart, over on the right-hand side. The top pie chart shows the number of orders that occur on a particular day. Now, this copy I made a while ago. When the user opens, typically the date that's right up here will be today's date. I've placed it a little older just so we can see some nice data. And each one of the slices in the pie chart shows the number of orders that are going out on this date, today's date, of a particular type. So here we can see that there are a lot of orders for blue cheese salad dressing going out, and there are also about 25% of the orders going out for Russian salad dressing, and just a few for Italian. Note that when you hover over each chart wedge, you can see the number of orders that go out. In browse mode, it seems as if nothing has changed. Now, let's go into layout mode, and we'll see how this pie chart is put together. I'm going to enter layout mode. Now, the first thing I'd like to tell you is the table that we're sitting on is an interface table. We can see right in the top left-hand side, it says interface. And we are looking at numbers of shipments from related records, and the related records go from the interface table to a sales order table to the sales order line item table. I'll show you that in the relationship graph. Manage, database. Here's our interface table right here. And the first step is interface sales order ship date. So here's my global field showing me the date that I have selected, and I'm looking at the ship date for those orders. Each order is made up of line items, sales order line items, and the next one we can see those are related from the universal ID of the sales order to the foreign key sales order universal ID for each line item. So yeah, I'll discard that. So let's go into the chart setup. Personally, I'm getting into the habit of always starting with your data source. Whenever I go into the chart setup, what is the data that I'm actually going to be charting? So right now, we're looking at related records, and the related records I want to chart are my sales order line items for the day that I have selected. That's the relationship that we just looked at. Interface, sales order line item. And when I look at those related records, I can specify to sort them right on the fly. I don't have to specify the sort in the relationship. I can do it right here. So I'm specifying in the sales order line item table. This is similar to sorting a portal. I'm specifying the item category. It's similar to a portal in that you can sort only on the table that you're actually looking at. You can't sort against related records. So I'm sorting by item category, and that item category is the type of sales order line item I'm looking at. Is it Russian dressing, Caesar dressing, etc.? Now, this is new, and this is very exciting. When I chart the data, I have the ability to either show individual record data. This was the norm in FileMaker 11. Or I can show summarized groups of records. And the summary, of course, is based on the sort. And you can change that right on the fly. And this is what you would see in FileMaker 11 when you try this. But in FileMaker 12, without adding any extra sorting fields or summary fields, I can summarize on the fly. And this is a great feature. Notice that in the chart area, I actually see how my chart is going to look. So I'm going to be looking at related records sorted by item category, and I'm summarizing by groups of records. Next stop is our actual chart setup. Now on the chart setup, first we define our category labels. Now this field is the same field that we're in this case, it's the same field that we're sorting over. So this is item category, and they show up around the outside here. And our slice data is how big each slice is. And in this case, I'm showing a summary field. This is a summary field showing the count of records in the sales order line item table. Now, I have a couple of different options. One is to show the values on the chart, and I have that selected, and that's why you can see the values of the categories on the outside. I also have a little bit more ability to fine-tune it. I can show the percentages, and so here now you can see that blue cheese is exactly 37.5%. I also, and of course you can specify how many decimal places you want to show on that. I'm going to just do 0, tab out of that field, it'll redraw. And we can also show the values. These values are the same things that you get when you hover. I'm going to turn that off because in this particular case, we don't really need them. So there you have it. That's our pie chart. Notice in FileMaker 12, I was able to just make use of the native summary fields that's already there. I didn't need to create anything new that I probably had already in the database. Now, in the next pie chart, I'd like to highlight another welcome addition. This one is essentially the exact same pie chart. I'm showing data. Let me go back into layout mode. I'm showing data from the same data source. It's related records, sales order line items, and I'm sorting by the same field, item category, and I'm showing summarized records. But my end users, who I always keep in mind when I build charts, in addition to just seeing how many cases of blue cheese dressing they sent out on a particular day, it's also very meaningful for them to know what was the value of those cases of cheddar cheese salad dressing. So in this case, my slice data is a little bit different. It's a summary field again, but it's the extended price or the extended cost of the line items in that slice. And I'm showing the values on the chart. And I'd like to show one new feature, which I'm very excited about. When we look at the shipment value, I'm not showing the actual data of each slice. Remember, you have to hover over it to see what the actual value is. Because the very nature of a chart and a pie chart is you can get an idea of what the value is just by looking. Oh, most of the shipments today are blue cheese. There were 18 of them. Now, if I hover over the same quadrant underneath, I can see the actual value of the shipments that were made back on the 17th. Now, this is very exciting. I have the value that's there is a formatted value. It's $49,580. There's a $sign and a comma. Let me show you how to do that. We'll go back into layout mode, double-click on the chart, and on the chart, when I click on actual values, I get to choose what's the data type of the values. In this case, it has to be a number, but I can format it any way that's appropriate. I can format it as currency, in this case, with a fixed number of decimals. They don't really care about how many pennies something is worth. Thousand separator, and whether to put the notation in the front or the back. Now, what's really fascinating about this is when the checkbox to show actual values is there, we get to manipulate this, and if we decided we want to show the cents, I could put a 2 in here. I can see that it updates right in my preview area. And if we go back into browse mode, there it is. But even if I turn off, let me go back into my chart tool. When I turn off showing the actual values on the chart, it retains that formatting. So now I've turned off the showing of the actual values. They've disappeared from my preview. And when we go into browse mode, they've disappeared. But when I hover over it, the value retains the formatting of the chart tool. This is a small thing, but I know it's very useful, especially when you're looking at charts with large numbers, to know where the commas are, to know how much product you've been shipping out. So this is a great new feature, and we'll be revisiting that a number of times in today's talk. Okay, now I'd like to move over to a line chart. If I can shift your attention from the right-hand side of the screen over to the left-hand side, we have a line chart showing the number of orders that have gone out per month for this client. The client has the ability to change the date range using the 2 fields that are up here. Right now, I'm looking at the past 12 months. If I'm not interested in the full 12 months, I can just do year to date. By clicking on this button, it changes the 2 fields that are up here, and it's summarized by month. It's not terribly interesting because it's only March. So we'll go back to here. There. So this is a line chart. Any of you that have used FileMaker 11 charting will know a line, it's really a misnomer. It's just a glorified bar chart, but you already knew that, and we'll get to that later. So let's look at how this chart was put together. I'm going to go into layout mode, and we'll double-click on the chart to bring up the chart setup tool. The first place I always go is my data source. Now, again, we're looking at related records. I think almost all the examples today will be related. Almost all will be related records. Our relationship is one less deep than what we were using on the pie charts. This is going from our interface file just to the sales order table. So I'm looking at sales orders, and I'm sorting them by a calculated field, which is the year and then the month tacked onto it. So that, and then again, I'm summarizing by groups of records. So this field here is, for instance, for January 2012, an invoice, a sales order that was created January 2012 will have a year-month field 201201, and so on and so forth. So I'm summarizing by that field, and that way I get to see data by month. Now let's go to the actual chart. Working from the top down on our chart setup section of the, I guess it's called the chart setup inspector. I give it a title, and notice everything that has the dots here, you have access to the calculation engine. So if I wanted, I could use the two global fields of my dates to put orders per month from here to there, or something along those lines. We define the type of chart, which is a line chart. On our x-axis, the horizontal axis, I'm going to put in that month-year calculation that we were talking about. On the y-axis, from that same relationship, so from my sales orders, I'm putting on my summary field, which is a count of sales orders, the number of sales orders. Now, let's talk about our axis options, because I've made a couple of changes here. Here we have the ability to make different options for the x-axis. The first thing that's a nice welcome change is, instead, if you don't want your labels to be perfectly up and down or perfectly horizontal, you have the ability to put them on an angle. What that does, it makes it a lot more readable for your end users, which is always a good thing. It also takes up a little bit less room on the screen, giving you more area for your data. On the y-axis, we have the ability to show major and minor ticks, and there's a calculation engine in here. We'll talk about that later. And I decided that I didn't want to take up the screen real estate to show my axes, the values on the axes, so I'm showing my data points right on the chart, like this. Now, how did I hide the numbers along the left and the right axes to see what my values are going to? I'll show you how I did that in the Styles tab. We haven't talked about this yet. Under Styles, we get to change things having to do with the color and the background and the chart text. So to hide the labels on the chart, all I did was simply make them 1 pixel high. That's the minimum number you can go. If you try and put a 0 in there like this and you tab out, it just drops a 1 in there for you. I'm essentially doing that same trick you can use for merge fields to make something fit in a smaller area, or the opposite trick for using conditional formatting to hide notes on a layout, which is making it very large so it doesn't show up. I'm making it very small so it doesn't show up at all. You have the ability to change both the font, the size, the boldface, and the color for a whole almost everything that's on a chart. The title, the legend, data points, and the axis titles and data points. If you don't need this much control over everything, well then you can simply choose automatic, and then it decides what's an appropriate, then it uses the same font that was available in the for your layout, and then you can change it globally just relative to the main font on the layout. Let me cancel out of here for a second. So here we have, again, the orders per month for a look back in the date range that's given right here. Well, this was all good, but these are both chart types that we've already had. I'd like to start talking about some of the new charting that we could do in FileMaker 12. I'm going to stay in the same database, which was actually developed by one of our clients, Joe. I'm going to go to Customers right up here, and I'm going to go to a particular customer. Let's see, Flash Printing. Here we go. Oh, I knew I was going to do that. Used the wrong button. I'm going to go to their details over here. Wow. So this is the detail layout for a particular customer. And I'd like to focus on this chart right here, the top one. This is a stacked chart. Now, one thing I didn't tell you about this company is they sell their product in two different ways. They can sell salad dressing either in bulk to restaurants or to other companies to repackage in their own brand, but they also sell salad dressing prepackaged in their own bottles. It's the same products, but they just sell in a different way, and it's very important for their particular business to track orders that are going out, either bulk orders that in larger quantities or orders that have been prepackaged in salad dressing bottles. So what I'm looking at is orders that have gone out per month, going back throughout time, actually, for this particular client. And in each bar, I see a breakdown between the bulk orders and the package orders. So, and then the sum of the two bars is the total sales per date range, per month. So for instance, if I just look here in the middle, I can see that they sold 15, they had 15 orders that were bulk orders, and they had 8 orders which were package orders. So you can see how a different customer might make different types of purchases over time. Let's talk about how we build this. I'm going to go into layout mode, and let's double-click on the chart. Go to Data Source. We're looking at related records, obviously. Starting from the customer table, we're going to the sales order table. And I've used the same trick, year, month, number, in order to group my data into months. So I'm sorting by year, month, number, and I'm showing summarized groups of records. Now let's go to the chart makeup. So the data on the x-axis is the same thing that we are sorting by. Now we can have two different axes. Since this is a stacked column, you need, of course, at least two different series to show the two different types of orders. You can add more using the plus sign, and you could remove one or the other using the minus sign. So for each series, we can give it a name, and the data, let me just use this to show, just so you can see the whole thing, is again our summary field, which is a count of orders of this particular type, count bulk orders. And if I look at the other one, it's the package orders. And the data that I'm representing is a summary field, which is a count of my package order flag, which I have in the sales order table. So this is a pretty good chart, but I'd like to show you some techniques that I've put together that will make this a little bit more readable. Oh, and notice we've put the legend up in the top. You have the option to show the legend or not. using this checkbox here. There, it's gone, and there it is. Now, depending on the type of chart that you're using, in this particular case, I want to have it on the top. But if you want, you have the ability now to put it on the bottom or on the left or right, whatever makes sense in terms of your presentation to your data. I'm going to leave it up on the top. Now, the dates on the bottom, this was a real big mess. I'd like to show you, I'd like to fix that a little bit. There. Instead of showing just the year, month, oh, oops. First, let me show you that it's text. I'm going to change the way I'm presenting this data on the bottom. Instead of just the year, month, I'm going to comment this part out and change this. I created a calculation which is going to show me the month name. I'm going to grab the actual month from that field, month, year, date, and then I'm going to convert it. I created a quick custom function to convert it to a shorter version of the month so it fits nicer. So it's going to be the name of the month, followed by a comma, and then the year. So now, and let's go to styles. Let's make that just a little bit smaller, easier to read. So now you can see, instead of putting the whole date 12/01/009 on the bottom, it actually has the names of each month. It's nice, and it's much more readable. And this gives a much nicer presentation to the end user. I went one step further on here. I'm going to take this one out. Putting 2 slashes comments out the line. And I'm going to just show every other instance. So it's a similar kind of calculation, but if it's even, then I show the date, and if it's odd, I don't show the date. So instead of seeing every single date along the bottom, especially because there's a lot of data, oops, let's just show every other one. So this gives you the idea of how your trend is going, but you don't necessarily need to see every data point. This is useful in a lot of different charts. Sometimes you'll see, like in the previous example, I just hide the axes totally, because the user, if they need more information, they can always hover over it or find it another way. These things are for quick visual interpretations of your data. Actually, I want to change it back because I liked this one the best with the name of the month. There. And let's go into browse mode. There. It's a little small, but it's readable. The next type of chart I'd like to show you, I'm going to make it right on the fly, which is the area chart. I'm going to take this chart and we're going to duplicate it because it's going to be the same kind of data. And I'm going to use our new tools to make sure it's the same height. And I'm going to move it just like that. And let's go to our inspector, and I want to make sure it's anchored on both sides so it gets larger. I'm going to take the same chart, and I'm going to change it to an area chart. Area chart shows both lines, one on top of each other. And there's a very significant difference I'd like to point out in a minute. But in order to change it, all I need to do is change the type of chart, because I have both lines already selected down here, or more formally, both series already reported. And under styles, I'm going to change the chart background. No, I'm not. I'm going to change the opaqueness. Where was that? Oh. Oh, I knew eventually I'd forget something. Chart background, color scheme, border. I need to make one of these opaque. Top of the style menu. Semi-transparent. There you go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stu. You're my hero. Make it semi-transparent. That's important because the package item orders were behind, and you don't always see them. There. So now let's go into browse mode. Now, the thing that's important, the important difference between the two styles of chart, the stacked column and the area chart, is in the stacked column, the height is the sum of the two, in this case, the two different types of orders. And in this case, it's just one in front of another. So you don't get the idea of what the total orders are, which may or may not be useful depending on your specific use case. These are both useful graphs, but they show different things, and you should be aware of the differences. That's really important as a developer to know and understand those differences. Let's go back to the main screen so I can show you the positive-negative chart. This is really useful to solve the problem of displaying negative numbers in a visually meaningful way. We have, now this chart I put together a little bit differently. Let's go to our data source. Always start with the data source so you know what you're looking at. Using a technique that I picked up from Anvil a previous FileMaker Academy talk, Anvil DataWorks, I have a monthly table, which is a table that's created using a server-side script. Every month it creates a record, and I drop into that record a bunch of information that the end user can use to pull up information on the fly instead of using a calculated value, because the number of orders that were placed last October never changes after October is gone. So there's a record that represents, for example, last October, and it has the number of orders that were made in that month. So every month on a server-side script, we make a new record to represent the month that was just finished. And those get added at the end of every month. That gets created at the end of every month. So the records that we're looking at are from our monthly table, and we're sorting them using that year-month key, which is the year with the month tacked on afterwards. And again, we're showing summarized groups of records. Now here, our x-axis, I'm also building on the fly. So the x-axis is the name of the month with a space followed by the year. This is just to show you that you don't necessarily have to always use the same field in the sort and the x-axis. You have great flexibility to use the entire calculation engine. Now, for our x-axis, I have to do a little calculation to find the change in sales. So the first, I have a case statement, and the first one is just a carve-out for the special case for the first record in the series. So the first record in the series doesn't have, you know what, let's come back to the carve-out. Let's talk about how we create the change in sales per month. On each month, I grab the number of sales that were made. Now, I have another relationship which finds from the month I'm currently on what is last month's record. That's from a relationship. So I take the sales from the current month and I subtract the sales from last month. So now that you know what the data is represented in the chart, once I charted this, I realized that the very first record doesn't have anything to subtract from for a change. So it inadvertently showed a very high change for the very first record, which wasn't really true. So I just created a case statement for the first record to just show 0. For every record after that, what we're plotting is the change in sales, which is this month's sales minus last month's sales. And then since everything was in millions, I'm just dividing by millions to give a better way to represent the data. It just looks nicer. So if we actually look at that in real life, browse mode, this is the difference between the two in millions. That's why I wrote in millions here. And along the bottom, we have our calculated value for the months, for each month. Actually, I just realized if we go back to our data source, we don't have to, this actually doesn't make any bit of difference. For our display data, we can show individual groups of records because we're just looking at the different month records. We're not actually summarizing anything. It doesn't make any difference if you choose one or the other. Maybe with a large data set, you might see a speed improvement, not choosing that. There we go. Now I'd like to move on to the scatter chart. I'll have to start talking a little faster. Scatter plot. And let's minimize you. My daughter just completed her 8th grade science project. She was looking at how well different types of insulation keep things warm. This is the her actual data, but well, the actual experiment isn't important today. But what is important is we have two things to chart: relative temperature change along the y-axis, and along the x-axis is time. This chart, this file might look familiar to you. I sort of stole the look and feel from FileMaker 12's sample files, but I also stole the layout from a talk that we heard a couple months ago at the Philadelphia FileMaker Users Group from Matt Odell. He presented another charting talk using the same kind of layout. I sort of liked it. On the bottom, we're looking at a list view of our actual data. These are the data points that my daughter recorded: time, the change in temperature, and she did 4 different experiments. So I have a third column here which indicates what type of data each chart, each record goes with. There were 2 control experiments, trial 1 and baseline, and then she did an experiment, and then she did a second experiment. So there are 4 different data types that are all in this table. Let's go into layout mode, and let's look at how you make a scatter chart, because this is scatter chart data. It's slightly different. We're going to start on the data set, our data source. We're looking at the found set. So these are all the records in the found set that we're looking at. And we're looking at individual record data, because each record is a point on the graph. And I'm sorting them using data. That's the sort. Now, when we go up to the chart, I've chosen a scatter chart. My x-axis label is time, and my y-axis title is just a piece of text. Now, I have 4 different lines on this chart. Pardon me, 4 different series. And the series are right here in the same kind of way that the stacked chart represents the different series. So let's look at the first control. Now, each one of my data points, my X and my Y point, is a calculation. And each one of these calculations looks the same. There's 8 calculations, 2 for each control and 2 for each experiment, for an X and the Y. If the type field is, in this case, if it's baseline, I show the value. Otherwise, I leave it empty. And this guy, oh, that was the one I did, is if I'm sitting on a baseline record, then I use that data. Otherwise, it's empty. For the second control, it's the same kind of calculation. If my scatter plot, if the type is trial 1, then I show my data. Otherwise, I don't. For each one of these data points, I can define what the symbol looks like. And down here are all the different symbols that you can use. They're all gray because we're going to give them color in the next step. So the 2 controls, since they're similar types of data, I gave them circles. And the 2 experiments, experiment 1 and 2, since they're similar type of data, I gave them squares. And then we're going to go to styles. And I'm going to pick a color scheme. This will define what colors show up for the different data points. And you've got a whole host of different things depending on how your layout looks and what is good for your particular data. I think the saturated one. Primary. Yeah, primary. So now we have the different data that's being presented. Now, I'm looking at all 59 data points. If I simplify my data, for instance, if I right-click on baseline and I say Show Matching Records, I just get to see in my found set. Remember, we're graphing the found set. The found set is just baseline, so I just see the baseline data. And if I go up to the top and I say Show All Records, boom. So this was really nice. I was able to show my data, and I even anchored it. So if I move it to the left and right, I get to get more of an indication that the insulated box held its temperature a lot longer. But I couldn't stretch this graph top down in the vertical very much. So I added this button here. Click on Graph. Gives me a better representation of the data. And I'm also taking advantage of FileMaker's new window descriptions. I can't click back here. The only way I can get back to my data is by closing it. And of course, one of the best things about FileMaker graphs is now that I'm in my own window, I can do that and I can really see my data. Try doing that with Google Charts. Can't do it. How are we doing on time? Got 10 minutes. Okay, talk faster, Salem. Okay. I got a lot of questions. Okay. Okay. I'd like to show one thing which is a really nice technique that I discovered that you can use on the scatter chart is that in a scatter chart it's possible to do a presentation that sort of mimics a filtered portal. Let's go back to customers and let's go to our Flash guy. I always like to present both data both in a tabulated format and in a graphical format. It seems to help for different types of people. So right here on my customer, I'm looking at all the different orders in my date range. My date range here is the last 12 months. And here I have a graph showing all of those different orders and how many gallons were in each order. Now, if I was only interested in the year-to-date, I could click on this button here, and I filtered my portal. This is using your regular portal filtering, so I'm only showing these, 10 records. My graph is representing exactly the same data now. Now, we do not have portal filtering in charts, but we have something sort of similar that we can use. So first, let's talk about the portal. This is the same relationship we were using before. These are the sales orders that go along with this customer. And this portal is filtered, showing just things with a date that's in between my date range, the max field and the min field. So just showing things whose date, this field here, is between these two. Now let's look at this scatter plot. My data source is the same data source, customer sales order, see? And I'm sorting it by date, and I'm showing individual records because I want to see every single order. And if I go to chart, my X data is the date, my Y data is the total gallons. And let's go down. My axis options, I'm setting my minimum and my maximum, not to using auto, but I'm using a calculation. So the minimum for my x-axis is my G-date field, which is this guy right here. And the maximum I'm using for the x-axis is the maximum G-date that's right here. So by constraining, if you will, the max and the min of my x-axis, I'm achieving the same effect that I have over here in the portal. So it gives a nice way to bring both pieces to show very similar data. So here I'm looking at just the records that are in 2012, and you can see down here my date range is 2012. And if I say last year to date, so this button is now going to change it from 1/2011 to 4/12/2011. I have a lot more records, a lot more orders, pardon me, and there's a lot more dots in here. And you can see the date range goes from here to 4/8/2011. Oh, and did I do the bubble chart? I forgot the bubble chart. Okay, let's run to the bubble chart, and then, okay. This is another customer, ironically, also named Joe. They create sales orders. We can just leave it at that. Here we have a bubble chart for a particular customer of them, and this is showing per year the dollar amount in sales that they've done. And each one of the bubbles represents the count of orders that they've done. So what do we actually learn from this? We can learn that over the past, this is an old client, over the past, how many years is that? 75 years? 12 years? The orders from this particular customer have remained relatively consistent, except 1 year in 2003 they made a huge order. Yeah, that threw us off. But it's relatively consistent. But what we've seen is over the past 5 years, the orders, instead of having roughly 17 orders per year, 19 orders per year, now they have only 5, 4. So they've obviously gone from ordering every 3 or 4 weeks, monthly, to quarterly placing orders. But the value, the actual value of their purchases for the year is still the same. This was important. My client actually wanted this information. So let's talk about how we do this guy. Go into layout mode. We're looking at related records from company to invoice, and we have a similar kind of field, which is the invoice year, and we're summarizing our data. In the chart, it's a bubble chart. Now, in a bubble chart, we have three things that we get to define. The x-axis, which is our invoice date year, and our y-axis, which is a summary field, just the same that we did before. It's a summary field, which is a sum of the invoice amounts, invoice totals. And I have a server-side script which writes it to a static field. That's why it says static right there. Now, our radius, which is how big the bubble is also a summary field. It's the actual count of invoices that we're looking at in that relationship. So once you define the radius data, then FileMaker automatically scales everything, so everything sort of looks the same. And it's also important on the scale on the bottom, I used a calculation to set the min and the max. So what we're doing is I'm using the minimum year, the minimum of the invoice year, date year, and then the maximum. That way, I'm just showing the years, and it doesn't show up as an actual date because it is a date field. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's get back to let's wrap this up. Don't raise your hand yet. So what I hope to have showed you today is there are many different types of charts that are now in FileMaker 12. You get a great new powerful way to manipulate the interface and change your data. You have better control over your data. And you also have user-generated charts, which I didn't get to show you. One of the things that's really cool is you can just like you can right-click on a field and you can sort or you can find on that field, you can right-click on a field and bring up that chart window, the chart dialog box, if you have full access to the database. And you can actually do charting on the fly. It's the same dialog box that we've been working with all day, so it's not interesting to look at, but it's really interesting to know that it is there. In order to understand charts, I have a couple of different web links, which I think would help almost everybody. These are things that I just found while I was doing some investigating for this presentation. Using charts in general, the Excel help documents were actually very good. I learned a lot about charting and how to chart. And here's some specific things to doing bubble charts. This will be posted up on the website. You don't have to write this down right now. You'll be able to copy and paste these for later. Of course, if you have any other questions, don't forget to email us at info@itsolutions-inc.com and follow our blog. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. I think Mark has been keeping a list.
Yep, we got it. Okay. So we're going to try and run through these questions as quickly as possible. Totally understood if you guys can't hang around with us because we might go a few minutes over, but we will try to wrap this up as quickly as possible. For those questions that we do not get to, we will post responses on the FM Academy website, guaranteed. There will be a follow-up post to this presentation. So if we don't get to your question, I apologize, but please check it's FileMakerAcademy.com and then the past webinars tab, and we will be hopefully by the time you see it, the first link until, of course, the next webinar, which is Tuesday, and then they will take over as the first link. So, and that will be layout mode enhancements presented by Keologic on this coming Tuesday. But we'll get to the questions right now. The first question we have is, will the PowerPoint be available for download? Yes, we can make the PowerPoint available, but we will also have a link to the video on FM Academy's YouTube channel. So you will be able to watch this whole thing and scan directly to the chart that interests you the most. In the chart title, can you add a field name like a merge field? For example, company name and the month for that company. Order per month for company.
Yes. Very good eye, whoever asked that. If you look over here, number of shipments, I put a calculation up here. I think this answers your question. Number of shipments, and then I put a field. It's not a merge field. You have the calculation engine, so you can actually just drop the real field in there. So yes.
There's another question, that comment that it is a nice calculation that hides some of the dates in the chart. Is that custom function available?
Yeah, it's just a calculation. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes, in the notes somewhere. It's not terribly extensible. I'm using the mod function to divide by 2, and I'm showing every other one. So it would take a little bit more work to show every third or every fourth, but it's a nice little technique that I use once in a while. I'll make sure I highlight it.
And anything new in 3D charting?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No. The short answer is no. The only 3D charting they do is the bubble. That's your entry into the third dimension. I assume this is not your answer, the 3D chart type. That is not three-dimensional.
Yeah.
But no.
Jumps right at it. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, they don't. That's not planned for this release. There's obviously a lot of more things that you can do with charting. If your needs go beyond what's in FileMaker, there's a whole host of tools in JavaScript and jQuery. Is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah. That do charting. They're a little harder to use, but if you have specific needs for specific types of charts, it's worth your while. Also, Google Charts.
And XM Chart's still around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to say they have a host of charts outside of the scope of FileMaker 12's charting, so XM Chart. In FileMaker 11, in FileMaker 12, can you use charts with a bound runtime version? And I mentioned to this person offline that we may have to follow up on that one. I don't know that in FileMaker 11, in our bound runtime solution, you could not use charting. So the question was, can you, in FileMaker 12's bound runtime solution?
I'll tell you in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but that we'll have to follow up with a post.
But you can use chart. All these charts are available in FM Go. I neglected to mention that.
And then we've got, can you define your own color schemes for charts or only use the pre-canned color selections?
I haven't discovered how you can create your own color schemes. However, I imagine, or I'm hoping, that with the CSS capabilities, you might be able to muck with that a little bit.
And one other question, do user-generated charts make changes to your schema, your database schema?
Oh, that's interesting. They actually can. If you go to, here, I'm going to go back to customers, and let's go to my Flash guy, just because I don't really feel like messing with anybody else. Oh, I meant to go to the other one. You can create fields on the fly. So like, watch this, since I got your attention. This is a great gem. I'm going to right-click on state. I'm looking at customers, and I just want to find all the matching records. So everybody that's in Pennsylvania, okay? And, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. Okay, so I got 1,000. And if I sort by, I'm going to sort ascending by customer type. There. I got a couple different customer types. Now watch this. I can right-click. I can chart by customer type right here. And it brings up the engine. And, oh, no, you're right. It doesn't affect the schema. I was thinking about adding summary fields in table view, which can add fields on the fly. I don't believe you can add a field on the fly here. But anyway, if I change this to a pie chart, and I have to show summarized data, okay. And I want to show my values. There. You can see the different types of customers from the data I'm looking at right now. And I can print this and I can say, if I have the right credentials, I can save it as a layout. So look, I'm not in layout mode, but I still get to do that, which doesn't answer your question, but it brings up something that I wanted to talk about. So solved.
And the follow-up, does that require admin rights?
You have to have...
Oh, layout creation rights.
Yeah,
okay.
You have to have layout creation rights.
Okay, and then we've got one more.
Okay.
Can you, and I think this is probably to drill down, but can you create a button for the individual bars on a bar chart so that you can, let's say, drill down to data?
I wish. FileMaker 15 will probably have that feature, I'm guessing. No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that would be killer.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. If we didn't get to one of your questions, we're going to run through these when the presentation is over, and we will post responses on the post. So that would be FileMakerAcademy.com. And then on the far right, there's a tab called Past Webinars, where all of the FM Academy 12 Days of FileMaker 12 series will have a blog post, hopefully the day after, but possibly Monday, if it takes us a little bit of time to get these answers for you. But hopefully as soon as possible, we will have a post for this. Please join us on Tuesday, April 17th. John Mathewson is going to be talking about layout mode enhancements in FileMaker 12. That is the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you all again, and sorry we went a little bit late, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.